Are you saying you faked with me?
Yeah.
Wrong. Now you're single.
What do you know about sexual relations?
Is it true that if you don't use it, you lose it?
I'm a little worried about being a slut.
You're listening to the Come With Us podcast, talking the good, the kinky, and the ugly. Here are your hosts, Beth, Aaron, and Tina.
Hello, all you sexy holes and poles. Welcome to Come With Us podcast, where we know that sexy stuff matters just as much as the lovey-dovey stuff. We're here to help you get all of the pleasure, all of the fun, all of the joy, all of the sexy that you can possibly get and that you deserve. I'm Beth Darling from BethDarling.com, here with Aaron, and today our guest is Kacey Samiee. Samiee. Yes, I think I got it right there.
100% correct.
Yay, thank you. She is the creator and producer and co-host of Talk Dirty to Me podcast. She's the founder of Little Renegade Films, which is a production house. She's also a fellow kinkster. Welcome to Come With Us podcast, Kacey. We're so glad that you're here with us today and to talk about your journey professionally.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
And personally. Good. I can't believe it.
Thank you for having me.
And Kacey and I have had a little bit of a chance to get to know each other. I was a guest on her podcast, and we met in a very different professional setting, a vanilla professional setting previously. But Aaron, you haven't had a chance to meet her, but I think she's one of us. She's open, she's smart, she's a little bit geeky, takes things seriously, wants to know more, and I think is curious about everything. Is that
absolutely? Yeah.
Yeah. See.
Yeah.
That's kind of it.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to break this up. We're going to do 2 episodes just so people understand what we're doing. First, we want to talk about your journey. You started in the podcast world talking about, Talk Dirty to Me, which is all about sex. How do you describe that podcast?
So just one little correction is I'm one of the founders of Little Renegade Films.
Okay. Thank you.
She hears this. I just wanted to correct that really quickly.
Right. We want to be inclusive. We never want to leave anybody out. Yeah. Thank you for that.
But it's run by 4 wonderful women now. And so Talk Dirty to Me is our most recent podcast that we've created. And the way we intro it is 4 different friends with 4 different perspectives on fetish, kink, and sex, talking dirty to one another.
I like that. And so, fetish, kink, and sex. Okay, so you got to tell us how you've got this job, you've got this, day job.
I do.
Doing all sorts of whatever stuff. Nothing to do with sexy. How the hell did you wind up?
I have a day job person, and then there's me that is all sorts of other things. And I've always been I've had a very small toe in the pool of the dom world for most of my life, but never really pursued it. And then what happened to start Talk Dirty to Me is I had an experience where I found myself all of a sudden having a slave all of a sudden out of nowhere. It was pretty great. And then my friend Stephanie, who's one of the co-hosts of that podcast, also admitted to me some time ago that she recently outed herself as a Spanko, and she had been that way her whole life since 4 and had always kept it to herself and thought it was bad and dirty and would try to pray it away, and read Sex with Shakespeare and realized that it wasn't as unique and dirty as she thought it was, and that she was not alone. And she told me her story, and it impacted me in that I felt that it was a really important story that many other people had, and I wished that they would communicate about it so that they would all know that they were all wonderful and not shameful. And it just seemed like an important story to tell. So with my experience and her experience, I was like, this should be a podcast. And so Talk Dirty to Me was born. I got her, my friend Sarah Marie, who is, as far as we know, a vanilla, but she usually just says that's private. Won't talk about the sexy things. And Tosin, who has been in the kink world for a long time and falls in our LGBTQ spectrum and loves all sorts of kinks. So it's us 4 together discussing our different kink journeys and perspectives and things like that.
That's so cool. And it cracks me up every time. Even when I met Sarah Marie, I was like, okay, if you think it's private, why do you have a show about sexy? And I love that. It's just great because, again, different perspectives. But for her, what she means is that her personal, she likes to keep private, but she does believe that talking about it and sharing different, not necessarily her own stories, but talking about things and ideas and perspectives and everything is valuable, which I think is good, because this idea, it's personal and they're private, therefore we never talk about it, I think is really not served anybody.
And she does share, and the reason I love her is I think I love her for many reasons. The reason I think she's important on the show is that I think she serves a very important demographic, and it is for people who have more boundaries around talking about that, but they still need to hear and be able to ask questions. And she asks those questions on their behalf.
Yeah, that's good. Well, that's why. So Aaron is here, and I've said Aaron is conservative.
I've heard.
Yeah, that's right. I had to tell her something, Aaron. I said some people just describe you as a curmudgeon, but you're a super nice guy, incredibly loyal, open-minded. Yeah.
I mean, curmudgeon kind of works too. I don't like anybody. I don't know.
Well, wait, you like me.
I like you.
Yeah.
I like
He's like,
I like individuals.
Like you.
I like
individuals. I know he doesn't like to admit it, but it's true.
I like you. I like Tina. I like Kacey. I've only met her for 5 minutes, but I like individuals.
Good 5 minutes, Aaron.
I hate humans. Humans are where it all gets off the fucking train. Crazy. Don't want to deal with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet here we are talking to humans all the time about human stuff. So it works. So I like that. So how did it, when you just decided to sort of dive in, right? Because this is, Aaron did the same thing with me and stuff, but how has it been for you? In fact, Aaron, how has it been for you too? Like in terms of telling people what you do, because does it change things for both of y'all?
I mean, I'll let Kacey go first. Sorry, I'm thinking about your co-host Sarah, but Kacey, go ahead. I'll let you go ahead, and then I'll give my brief perspective.
Sure. So, how is diving into a kink podcast affected my life? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Oh, it's been great. It's affected it very positively. I get it's like, because I was on my own kink journey, but being on a podcast where you talk about it with other people who are exploring and discovering and have their own experiences has magnified that growth and understanding so very quickly. It's been potent in because I talked about it before with anybody. And now I have a weekly conversation of people asking me what my update is and talking about their lives and experiences. So the information sharing has been incredible, and the potential for other people hearing it and having their lives affected positively is great. And that it makes me very happy.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah. No negativity. Do you tell other people?
Okay. I tell anybody. I mean, if somebody asks, then I tell them, because I feel like even people who kind of are like, kink, what's that? That's weird and dirty. If you have a real conversation, they talk to me first and they're like, that Kacey, she's pretty normal and cool. And then later, if it comes up that I do a podcast and they ask about it, I tell them, and they already have an understanding of who I am. And, at worst, they'll be like, oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. Or they'll be like, oh, cool. I'm what? And then you have a dialogue about it. And then you find that no matter how vanilla they think they are, or how much they don't know about kink, or their, what they think they know, or their opinions that were developed years ago, founded on nothing, you end up having this conversation with them, and they end up asking questions, and then they end up listening, and then they realize that they're kinky too. Yes. I know.
We're all a little bit kinky.
So everybody's a little bit basically kinky. The gateway drug.
I am the gateway drug. I love that.
For every vanilla person that encounters you in the real world, you're just the small gateway drug of hey, check this out. And then it's oh, well, no, keep going. No, keep going. Keep going. Oh shit. Yeah. What did I get myself into?
I have a couple of friends who, since I started doing this, and they love me and support me, so they listen to it, and through that they're like, I think I'm kinky, and I never really admitted it to myself. And I'm like, fantastic, welcome.
Yeah.
Me too.
Well, like how many people, like we did it ourselves as an episode. Like we all took the kink test. Like we took the shortened version because there's one that goes on for like 4.5 days.
Oh yeah,
it
is endless.
We took the short version, and like we all looked at each other and like, I don't know, Beth, did you ever take it before then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were the only one, but like then it like reviewed things, and like Tina and I both looked at each other and looked at our scores, and I'm like, yeah, I mean that makes sense. It's just how like if you're vanilla in your personal life, like who goes out, like you don't go out searching for something unless you feel like you're missing something, or there's something that you want that you can't describe and stuff like that. Like how does anybody go and find something new? Well, they want to go learn something. Most people who, in my experience from the people we've talked to who are vanilla, but like realize that they were a little bit more kinky, never really thought about it because they're like, oh, I'm happy with what I got. And then they dipped a toe in the pool at one point because their partner asked them to spank them or tie them up or something like that. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, yeah, I never tried that flavor of ice cream, but sure, why not? And then it like you just start going down. You're like, okay, cool. I want to try butter pecan. Now I want to try mint chocolate chip. Now I want to try the cotton candy. Cotton candy sounds like shit, but I'll still try it anyways.
See, I think it's that people don't look for something unless they've heard, unless they know it's there.
Unless they know it exists. Yeah.
Right. I say people lived with cockroaches until you know that they're exterminators. You would just stop noticing the cockroaches because there's nothing you can do about it. Once you know there's an exterminator, it's like, oh, that's it. I want that. And I think so. Yeah. Aaron, but what about you? Did you get shit for like when you're vanilla? Because you're in the sports world, you're in the radio world, very conservative, masculine, a lot of toxic masculinity in that field.
Oh, shut up with that.
No.
He loves that term.
It's a bullshit term. It's not a real term.
A lot of
anyways.
Yeah. A lot of masculine energy.
No, I haven't got nobody's given me shit about it. There's been people who I didn't expect who've come up to me and been like, hey, so you have a podcast? And I've been like, I do. Why haven't you told me about it? Well, because I'm not going to go advertising it to people like you specifically because we are too close to have a bond of a relationship that I'm not going to cross that line of like, hey, it's like if one of my friends came to me and like, hey, I need to like ask your advice or your opinion about stuff like that, or do you want like if we're in a group setting and we have a conversation about like sexy stuff, then that's fine. But I'm not about to like go out to people that I'm closest with and go, hey, here's me talking and you just listen to me and talk about my sexual experience and my personal life. Have fun. That's just not how I am about that stuff. Like that's why I like doing it with you, is because there's a conversation there. I wouldn't do a solo podcast on sex, love, and relationships by myself because I don't have any, like, I don't want to expose myself to everybody like that all at once. Like in a small setting, and that's why it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, there are certain, not blood family members, but legal family members who've been like, hey, really enjoy the podcast. I'm like, hey, you didn't need to tell me that you listen. It's okay. Like, and then they'll like, I love you listening. I love you supporting it. But we like, no, that's a little bit weird.
How funny.
Oh, see, I would love it. My family, nobody talks about it. They just ignore it. Like and I would be thrilled if anybody in my family said that they listened, and certainly if they enjoyed it. Damn.
So yeah, I mean that's what I've experienced so far with it.
That's funny.
I mean, I've actually noticed because recently a couple of female coworkers had asked if like what I do on air, or like because I used to be an on-air radio host, now I'm not, and they were like, well, are you still like putting stuff on tape? Which is what it in the radio world, when the peek behind the curtain of radio is, if you find yourself off the air, the whole thing is you keep recording, and that's how a lot of podcasts got started. But you always are just doing it to keep skills. Keep that skill and keep that exercise going, and to be able to talk and not sit here. Like, we're not sitting here with 45 minutes or 45 seconds of silence because I can talk and I can keep the conversation moving. And a couple weeks ago, a couple female friends who at work had asked, and they were like, what are you doing to keep your voice on tape? And I was like, well, I have a podcast. And they were both like, what's it about? So I told them, and for being male and telling two young, attractive women, like, this is what I do and this is what I talk about, they were like really intrigued and like not liked me more, but then wanted to talk more about it with me. And I was like, that seems like the opposite of anything I have ever experienced. Like,
oh, that's so cool though. But I think that's what Kacey was saying. Once people know that you're a safe place, then they want to kind of hang out and stay for a while, I think.
Yeah.
I like that. So Kacey, what are some of the most interesting things that from your perspective, that you've talked about on the podcast?
We just had a guest on that is an expert in sounding. Yeah.
Nope.
Aaron is shaking his head no.
No.
So many people shake their head no, except for the people who aggressively shake their head yes. For everybody who doesn't know, sounding is when you take a small metal or silicone rod and use it to penetrate the urethra of a penis or a vagina. Because some people find, like our co-host Tosin from a young age was like, I like the feeling of a catheter being taken out, whereas most people find it painful. So there are those that like enjoy that type of penetration, and it's an entire kink category, and it's an entire thing. And most people clamp their legs together, but not everybody. So
like, because we've talked about it before, and like Beth, again, another peek behind the curtain, Beth is like, hey, let's do a whole episode on that. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to wince in the corner the whole time. Like, that is one part of like the kinky world that to me, it's not a like, oh, I'm just going to like dip my toe in, or I'm just going to wade in the shallow end. Like, no, you're jumping off of a freaking high dive. Like you either like it or everything about it makes you go, nope. Like there's some things that you mention, like, or any of us talk about in the kink world, that people go, I mean, yeah, I'm probably not my thing, but I'll try it. I don't know if I've ever met any person in the world that I would think would go, I'll try that. Like, that's not a try thing. That's
sounding?
Like but actually,
I've encountered them. There's people who are like, it's hard to find somebody who will do it, and I want to try it. And you know how to do it? How do I?
See,
I know we don't know each other. Will you look
interested
at my
in it?
penis?
You're either interested in it or you're not. Like,
no, it's actually, I would say that's what our country thought about sushi until people here started eating it. Now there are sushi restaurants everywhere. When I grew up, you couldn't find a sushi restaurant. Everybody you talked to would be like, raw fish? No way, right? We didn't do it. It's that once somebody starts talking about it, then people who really hadn't ever thought of it, now they start thinking, and then they become open to it. But there are, in fact, I didn't realize, because I didn't learn about kinky stuff until much later. My kids were grown. But now I know that if you have little boys, you should talk to them about not sticking things up their penis, because there are a lot of little boys who from a very young age are sticking things up their penis because it feels good to them. Yeah, right. But it's true. So you have to realize that. And then there are people that just like, maybe you have this idea of a threesome or something and whatever, but then once you start talking to people, you can realize maybe it's more than threesomes. Maybe I really do want a swinger or polyamory life and stuff, right? So sometimes one thing goes to another. So I think part of the reason that, Aaron, from the vanilla standpoint, sounding is like, all, very extreme, all in or not, is just because it's not part of our regular conversation. Like spanking people, even vanilla people can spank an ass once in a while, and that's like, okay. But sounding isn't part of this, so we never open the door to it, which is why it seems like, you're either through the door or not. Because
I think you're also thinking that the reason somebody receives sounding is because they want it. Whereas I think also the kink for sounding also lies on the person who wants to penetrate, right?
Yes.
So if you're in a relationship with somebody and they're like, hey, this is my kink, how do you feel about it? And that person is maybe like open to it or neutral, all of a sudden they'll try it. Or if that person is submissive, they're like, well, you are asking this of me, so I will do it. And then later they're like, turns out I liked that. Right. So it's the kink for sounding lies on both parties who are participating.
Yeah, I've said before, countless episodes, I will try almost anything that my wife brings to the table. She would bring that to the table. That'd be a hard hell no.
You know, it's so far what I've discovered about sounding is that it's very polarizing.
Yeah,
And most people are like,
why.
oh, no, thank you.
Yeah. But I know one guy who really was adamantly opposed, and he was in the kinky world. So he was exposed to this a lot. He was a dom, but for years he kept hearing his friends, male friends who really enjoyed it. And finally this guy's like, all right, I don't think I'm going to like it, but I'm going to try it once, right? Because at some point you just got to see what it is. And he tried it. And then he tried it again. And again. And it wasn't, he didn't like the kinky because he really was a dom, but there was something about the sensation that, you know, so again, it may or may not be for everybody, but you don't know it's a possibility until you hear people talking about it. So, and I think that's an important one. I also just want to caution anybody out there who's thinking, oh, I want to try this. Don't just stumble your way through this, right? Mm-hmm. It is very, very dangerous. You need to be with somebody who's experienced. You've got to do a lot of learning to do it well. And you sure as hell don't want to do it when somebody's under the influence of drugs and alcohol. That is just not likely to end well.
I mean, this is going to sound, as a mom, you're going to be like mortified that I would use this as an example. This isn't like the whole, oh, I'm drunk in Vegas, I want to get a tattoo kind of thing.
Exactly.
Like, no, like even the tattoo is still permanent, but there's ways of taking care of that. Like that's not something you do.
Yeah, no.
You don't just walk down a back alley and you're like, ooh, tattoo shop. Why not? I've always wanted the word bad on, part of me or something like that. or a smiley face or a lightning bolt, whatever. Like there's reckless decisions like that. And if you want to live that way about tattoos, go for it. I like tattoos, but I think you should put a lot of thought into them before just like recklessly going, oh shit, yeah, like why not? Like
but sounding like again, if you puncture through the urethra, if you tear things, like it's not going to be pretty.
That's not something. That's not something that ever sounds like a good idea of being like, oh sure, yeah, I'll just figure this out as I go, kind of thing. Yeah,
Mistress Ella, we have a pro dom who's been on our show before. That is one of my friends, and she is amazing at sounding.
Fantastic!
She is just really. She knows, and just heads up also that different equipment is better quality or not. So that again, don't just think, okay, go order something on Amazon, watch a YouTube
No,
video,
I was going to say, if you're listening to this and you're curious, you should go find a pro dom who knows what she's doing and pay for her time and experience it that way.
Yeah. Yep. She can teach you. So, and Mistress Ella, if you don't recall, I forgot what episode and stuff, we'll try and put it in the show notes, but her website is lickmyboots.com, I think.
Amazing.
Yeah. And she's just awesome. Like she takes this stuff so seriously. It's really incredible. Mm-hmm. But yeah. Okay. So Soundy, that's a really interesting one. I'm so glad. Have you ever tried it personally?
No. And I didn't realize until the episode that it was something that could be done to women as well. Yeah. And then our guest who spoke about it I was like, do you do it? And she said, I've tried it once, but for women, we're so much more prone to UTIs and bladder infections, and our urethra is so much shorter that it's actually a lot more dangerous. There's other repercussions that come with it. So she just stays away from it. Also, the truth is that when I found out that it could be done to women, my response was very similar to Aaron's. I was like, crossed my legs and was like, I don't know if we need to continue discussing this anymore. Let's move on to something else. But I didn't. I was just like, I had no idea it could be done to women. I thought I don't know, urethras were different or something. It turns out they're not, and you can stick stuff up it. Mm-hmm. But I have no interest in that. I do have a segment on the show called Kacey Tries It, where I'm going to do my best to experience and administer every kink that we talk about, if I can find somebody who's willing to do that with me. And I asked the guest that day if she would be willing to guide me through doing it to somebody, but I was like, I don't need to experience it. I will just administer it to a man.
That's funny. But that is so brave that you really think you're going to try every kink. Like, what about needles?
I'll do needle play. I'll try needle play. My boundaries, I'm not going to have like a sexual interaction with somebody for a kink. Like I'm not going to have sex or touch genitals in a sexual way. But when it comes to like experiencing needle play or caning or whatever, yeah, I'll try it. That's great Patreon content.
My gosh, I am so afraid of needles. I just
are you?
can't imagine. Oh yeah, it just scares me. So
Needles are tools.
yeah,
one of our
some
upcoming
them are
guests.
beautiful,
One of our upcoming guests is he does needle play a lot. He's an expert in needle play, so that's why I bring it up, because that's going to be the thing that I ask next is, can we do it? Casey tries it with needle play.
Wow. Oof.
Have fun with that.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen people with like huge designs across their backs and course.
Yep.
Oh my, I mean, it's fantastically beautiful, but I can't watch. I go when I go.
It goes.
Oh my gosh. So I've gone to kinky parties where they're doing, whatever sort of, for me, extreme, like needles or such significant impact. And I've had people tell me that they watch me almost more than they watch the scene going on, because every time there's something, like I feel it. I just feel it. So sometimes so much more than the person actually receiving it. And oh God, yeah, it exhausts
That's great.
me just to like, I have to like shake it off. Yeah. So
shake it off, Beth.
Shake it off. Yes. But I've watched somebody also like take their boob and put it on a wooden plank and get their boob like nailed
or stapled. Yeah.
Oh,
It's a thing people do. I don't understand that one. I haven't found somebody to discuss it yet. It's making me squirm as well, but I don't know how you could do that safely without infection, but it's a thing that happens and people love it. And in the spirit of being open-minded, I say, great. Yes. Staple your boob to a board. Have a great time.
You can be open-minded enough for both of us, because that's nope.
Well, and that's, again, this is the idea that, what turns them on, I'll think is crazy. What turns me on, they can think is crazy. We just need to be like, oh my God, that's crazy. And then tell me more. Like, why do you like it? And how do you do it safely? And what do people need to know? So
wait, Aaron, you just don't want to talk about it, or you just don't think it should exist?
Partially, I don't think it should exist, but that's because I've done a lot of research and reading and listening to serial killer stuff.
Oh God!
And then like you talk about like
that boob is dead.
Well, you talk about stuff like that. Like, okay, fucking disclaimer. If you go researching this on your own, listeners, this is all you. I just wouldn't do it. There was a serial killer named Albert Fish.
I can't even hear this stuff. I have
to
take my headphones out.
Go on, take them out.
Who I mean, now none of his stuff was consensual because he was a serial killer, but he was a massive sadist, and he used to stick needles and nails and stuff. Like, this is back in like the 1900s, like early, like pre-depression.
What did he do?
He used to like stick them through but also victims, like genitals in their ass, like full on like 10-penny needles, just whack inside them. Yeah. And he used to do a lot worse stuff than that too. But
oh my gosh,
like he was the Beth, you can put your headphones on now. I will end it with this. Okay. He was the devil incarnate. Like, seriously, it is.
Oh, I've never. What is his name again? I'm gonna talk about him. I'm talking to me. Albert Fish.
The werewolf of Wisteria, and he had a million other nicknames. But like stuff like that. Like, after hearing that, and years ago, I was like, dude, there's no way I could ever bring myself to respect a human that does that to another human. And I get it. His was non-consensual. This is consensual. But to that point, it's still a hell no for me. Like, nope, that shouldn't be something that anybody ever wants to experience ever.
Oh, wow. But what if they do, though?
Yeah.
I mean, it's their body and their life.
Yeah.
Like, but I don't ever want to hear about it. I don't want to know it exists. Like, I don't.
It just freaks you out.
It's just a thing that I judge, and somebody will go, well, you shouldn't judge people. Well, why? Why do you give a shit if I'm judging you? Like, I'm a nobody. If I judge your kink, okay, cool. You're probably going to judge mine. Other people judging me doesn't bother me about stuff. Like, oh, well, you shouldn't. What's your everybody's special in their own way theory there, Beth.
Well, no, I'm just saying, but you just judge like that's just not for you. It's not like you necessarily just think that they shouldn't be allowed to do it and stuff like that. You just have your own opinion.
I don't think that they shouldn't be allowed to, but I also think that the fact that they do makes me not want to hang out with them.
Interesting.
Okay.
Like that's just who I am.
That's who you are.
I mean,
right? I'd say I probably don't
judgment
want
is
to hang
what
out
has
with somebody
kept
who goes
every
to
living
church every day.
organism alive, as long as their entire chain has been going. What keeps the antelope alive? Looking at a lion in the grass and judging that thing's not safe. I'm gonna get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Judgment is everybody now at this wants to go, oh, judgment is such a bad thing. No, judgment's not a bad thing. It's when you do bad things using your judgment.
Yeah.
Well, I
Judgment
think
is what helps keep species propagating.
You know, if I could liken this to another situation, I used to, it was hard for me to understand degradation because I knew being a humiliatrix interested me, but I also was like, I'm a really nice person.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to imagine telling somebody that they're worthless and a pile of shit or whatever is not bad for them in some way. And maybe that treatment that they desire isn't from some trauma in their youth and, blah, blah, blah. And I had a hard time reconciling the fact that intrigued me and how that would affect somebody negatively and that I shouldn't do it until I witnessed it and saw somebody in front of me, their reaction when I did it. And I was like, oh, I am entirely misunderstanding their response. I'm misunderstanding how this affects them. It's not like I tell them they're a piece of shit and then they feel like a piece of shit. They genuinely derive pleasure from it. Like the experience they have on when like you can see it on their face and they're like, yeah, tell me I'm garbage. I love it. Like it turns them on and it makes them really, really happy. So I have a feeling I understand not wanting to hang out with people who like their boobs stapled to boards. It's probably less dramatic than you are thinking, but also I think you're imagining it as a terrible thing when in fact you could watch it and see the incredible amount of pleasure that is received from it because the pathways for pleasure and pain are so close to each other in your brain. That's why this happens. That's why this happens. And that's why people really enjoy pain in, any form, like whether it's spanking or figging or, any sort of masochism.
Boxing,
what?
football, boxing.
Yeah. No matter.
Football.
And the reason is, it's because it's so close to the pleasure pathway in the brain. So the two are like really close cousins. And it sounds awful, but I imagine if we saw somebody do that who really, really enjoyed it, we'd see the incredible amount of pleasure on their face because nobody would do it if they didn't experience pleasure. And you'd be like, oh, well, stapling a tit doesn't seem so bad now.
Well, we'll agree to disagree on that part. I'm pretty sure I would see it and be like, and I would say things that again would make them upset and stuff like that, and it wouldn't go down a very nice thing. But also, I just reminded myself of this when I was about 3 or 4 years old. I had a mechanical office stapler go through my thumb.
Ow!
Because as a 3-year-old, it just made a loud noise, and so and there was a staple that went all the way through my thumb, through the nail and everything. And so that's another part of the stapling part. But needles and all that stuff. Like no, like I'm good. I don't need to.
Yeah. Hey, but that's okay. I don't hang out with people who do boxing, right? Again, so we all do. We get to have our things, and this is part of why I like our show. I like talking with Aaron because he does have very, very strong opinions that are very different than mine, and I think it's very helpful.
My response to finding somebody who likes something weird done that I don't know about is like, can I watch?
Me
really?
Too.
You want that to happen to your body? Can I witness?
Depending on what it is, like probably 60% of the time I'm in line with y'all on that. But the other 40%, it's not a can I watch? It's me just wanting to hold them down and be like, what is wrong with you? Like, what happened that made these wires misfire in your brain kind of thing?
And for all the people listening right now, there is nothing wrong with you. And the wiring in your brain is not misfiring. You are totally normal and wonderful. And it's not shameful.
Right. But sometimes I think we do sometimes our brains are wired differently. Just my ADHD brain is wired differently than a neurotypical, right? And there's just certain things that no matter how hard I try, and I fucking do try, they don't work for me. And so it's not that there's something wrong. I just think we just need to celebrate that we are very unique, very, very different. And it's just, we could all have the same ingredients and make a completely different meal, right? What we do with the basics, how we combine them, when we combine them, how long we let them cook, et cetera, can create something completely different. And that's what humans are. So I don't think when we're thinking about what's quote normal, I don't think that's really a good question. We can think maybe average or something. More people tend to be a little bit like this than perhaps others. But the more creative, the more intelligent, and the more adventurous, right? The more likely you are to actually be into kink, and then go to further and be willing to try new things and to see what it is you like. But again, nobody ever got to be a top chef by doing the same recipes over and over and over again that everybody else was doing. They had to try their own things, make mistakes, burn things, and have some things work out well and some not. That same approach is what we should take, I think, from Sexy, that it is perfectly reasonable, rational to try new things and just see what it is that works for your specific brain and synapses and sensation levels and stuff.
Yeah. And to me, it's quite evolved that somebody can have something incredibly painful happen to them and they're like, ow,
Yes.
ow.
Yes.
Right? Like I would rather have that
Right.
experience and just have it ended, ow. Like,
Right.
oh, damn it. And
Right.
then all of a sudden your brain's like, or we could like just swing this over into pleasure a little bit.
Right,
That's
right.
evolved to
Context
me.
becomes everything. You know, if a stranger touches you just lightly, that feels bad. But when somebody you love touches you firmly sometimes, that can feel really great. So yeah, context and stuff. So anyway, okay. So wait, we've got to wrap this up, but we've got so much more. And especially I love the humiliation stuff and the Dom aspect of it and everything from your standpoint, Kacey. So I'm
Sure.
excited. We'll come back next week and follow up with that. But do you have anything that you want to add about what you've learned, what you want to tell people about your podcast, or your favorite takeaway?
From this my favorite takeaway from this episode, or my favorite takeaway from starting a podcast?
From starting a podcast.
Yeah, like I think a lot of times people have a really hard time with dreams and really large projects that seem insurmountable, and I think that's stupid. Honestly, information sharing is key to evolving as people and helping others realize who they are and that they're normal and okay. Like not even in kink or sex, but like, if you have an idea you want to talk about or a film you want to do or whatever, like just do it. Like start really small and take baby steps and get it done and talk to other people who do the same thing, because ultimately you'll be, no matter what the art is, you'll be helping other people and you'll be massively improving your life and reaching your own goals. So just do it.
Ooh,
Just do
I
it.
like that. Just do it. Small steps. I'm
Small
so
steps.
not good at that, but I appreciate. So, all right, good. Well, thank you. Kacey Samiee from Talk Dirty to Me podcast. And you can find that anywhere you listen to your podcast.
It's on any streaming platform. There's about 5 podcasts called Talk Dirty to Me, as it turns out, but we're the only active one. There's ones from several years ago that did like between 3 and 4 episodes and then stopped. So ours has a white background with like big lips on it that are like bright pink and bright blue kind of colors. And it says Talk Dirty to Me. So you can find us there.
Oh my gosh. So you're similar to our logo. Or Come With Us podcast.
Oh, kind of. Well, no, not really. We're
Okay.
not. We're just the lips facing
Just the lips.
forward.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not,
Cool.
like ours are
Okay.
two like form faces.
Okay.
Theirs is just the lips.
Okay.
Which
Mwah.
is really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know who did that, but they did a freaking bang
Sarah
job.
Marie. Thank you. Sarah
Oh.
Marie does all our logos and websites and stuff. She's amazing.
Oh,
Nice.
fantastic. All right, good.
I like her
And
work.
you can find
I'll
more
let her know.
at from Kacey and stuff at littlerenegadefilms.com.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all so much. Aaron, thank you. We'll be back next week and we'll talk about Kacey's personal journey into the world of kinky and dominance. And I want to talk more about that humiliation degradation,
yes.
because
Can't wait.
that does not get enough play, I think, in my mind. So, all right. So thank you everyone for joining us for this
Thank
episode
you.
of Come With Us podcast, where you get the bare naked truth about love, sex, and relationships. And of course, You can get more sexy, fun tips and tricks by following us on Instagram, Facebook, even Twitter. Don't wait. Follow us now. Get active, stay engaged. Let us know what you're thinking. We can't wait to see you online. Also, go to bethdarling.com, get information. My book, 5 Kinds of Intimacy, is available for pre-order and will be released on January 31st, 2023. So please make sure that you get that at Amazon. All right, Aaron and I are so glad to be on this sexy journey with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Big hugs, big love, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Come With Us podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media at Come With Us Podcast and send in your questions, comments, and confessions to comewithusconfessions@gmail.com. Until next time, keep it fun, flirty, and naughty.